a story of a woman who tried to murder you.
Yeah.
You talked about your struggles, with the Soviet Union, your struggles with people turning you in. What was the story about a woman who tried to murder you?
Yeah, there have been several cases, at least two that I remember. But this particular lady had come to the church. She told me, "See, I came because I came to kill you, because of all the rumors. I've dispersed so many false rumors about us, that we are deceiving people, we are just making money, we are selling drugs." I mean, a whole lot of things. So she was so angry, and I think some of her relatives were coming, and she didn't like what was happening. So she came to murder me. And what happened is that she was waiting to the end of the meeting to approach me and then to murder me. But she was so moved by what she heard and how the Lord touched her that she gave her life to Christ. And she leads one of the home groups in our church.
That's
My name is Frederick. My surname is Ankai-Taylor. I was born in Ghana, West Africa. And that's where I was raised until I was around 21 years old. Then I moved to the Soviet Union on a government scholarship to study medicine. I was raised in a Christian home. From my mother's side, they were Methodists, and my father was also an Anglican, although he was not a practicing Christian, but he considered himself a member of the Anglican Church. But my mother was very practical in her faith. She was active in a local Methodist church, and she, although had no formal education, she had been taught by the Methodists to read the Bible in our local language. And she made sure that she taught all of us, her children, to read the Bible, to learn to read the Bible, even before we went to school. So that gave us a very good start. I grew up with my mother and my brothers and sisters because my father died when I was 4 years old. My father was a tribal chief in Ghana, in Cape Coast. He was a chief among a certain group of people, not in the city, but among a certain group of people. And that gave him a lot of privileges. Because of the things that my mother had to go through to take care of us, she found it very difficult because she didn't inherit almost anything from our father. And then we were basically thrown out into the street by the other wives when my father died, and he didn't leave a will behind. And so, but my mother was very keen to give all of us education. And so, but that required a lot of money in Ghana, and she worked very hard. So she was basically doing trading, petty trading, just buying and selling. And then she had to work very hard to give us education. But then something happened one day when I had malaria, and somehow I was denied medical care by the doctor in favor of other people who had the money to pay. And that was the time that I just promised myself that I will become a medical doctor. And I said I will become a medical doctor and I will treat people for free. And so I went to college, that's high school in Ghana. I did specialize in physics, chemistry, and biology in order to go to medical school. To qualify for the medical school in Ghana was very hard because only a few were chosen. There were only 2 medical schools in Ghana at that time. But I did my best, and I got one of the highest marks for the entrance into the medical school. So I was provided admission to the medical school. But at the same time, I heard that people were being given scholarship to study in the Soviet Union. That was free of charge. In Ghana, you have to pay for the medical education, most of it. For the Soviet Union, you won't pay anything, but you'll be given allowance also. The only negative thing is that the quality of doctors prepared in the Soviet Union as compared to those prepared in Ghana was not the same. It was better to be prepared in Ghana than in the Soviet Union. But because of the financial difficulties that we had, I still wanted to go to the Soviet Union. And I said that with God's help, I will come out as a very good doctor. So I got a government scholarship, and that is why I was sent to the Soviet Union. And we came to Moscow. We were hundreds of students from Africa. And from Moscow, we were sent to different areas of the Soviet Union. And that is why I was sent to Ukraine. So I didn't choose to come to Ukraine. I was sent to Ukraine, just to a medical school in Vinnytsia. Part of my life was, I would say, in the Soviet Union, and part was in the Ukraine. So part of the first part of my life in the Soviet Union, when I came there, religion was not official. So we had to, I had to find a way to keep my faith. So that's why we gathered with other students, also mainly from Africa, who were Christians, who just gathered and study our Bible. But about 3-4 months of being in the Soviet Union, I got to know of the underground church. And so we started visiting underground church. And that was a big surprise for me because it was different. First of all, they were meeting not in downtown, but they were meeting at the outskirts of the city. And where foreign students are not supposed to be. They were also in a closed society where they had no contact with the outside world. So we were their only contact. And so we were visiting them. And one of the things that shocked us was, for instance, they were reading Bibles and hymn books that were completely handwritten. So this was what they had. They had very, very few, only some people in the group had Bibles. These were home groups. They met in houses and they were illegal. So they had to close their windows. And when they are found, they are fined with up to about a 1 month pay. The owner of the house has to pay the government. Sometimes they are imprisoned for those meetings that they were organizing. And they would take us from village to village. It was all undercover because you are not supposed as a foreigner to travel more than 50 kilometers from the city where you are studying. You have to have a special visa. So they have two kind of visas, the white visa and the green visa. The white visa is needed for foreigners to travel more than 50 kilometers out of where they are studying. The green visa, you need it to travel out of the country, even if you are going back to your hometown, to your home country. So of course, you have to have a reason to have the visa, and we can't say we are going to visit churches. So we have to do it illegally, visiting all these churches. Until 1991, when Ukraine got its independence. So that was another part of my life that we started evangelizing. Before then, we've been evangelizing many of the Ukrainians. They were very open, giving their life to the Lord. I got married also in 1991. My wife had given her life to the Lord about a year or two, or maybe two before the Communist Party came down. So she was raised in a completely, I would say, a non-Christian home.
Меня зовут Елена Анkai-Taylor, и я родилась в Казахстане, потому что мой папа был военный, и я родилась в воинской части, там, откуда взлетела первая ракета в космос, на Байконуре. И всю жизнь я жила в Сибири, на севере, потому что папа служил. И потом, когда закончила школу, я приехала в Украину, потому что мой папа с Украины. И в Украине я познакомилась с Господом. Это было удивительно, потому что я всегда слышала о том, что Бога нет. Я жила в атеистической семье. И глядя на людей, которые верят в Бога, я видела, они добрые, они открытые. И они очень хотели, чтобы я стала верующей. Но я говорю, я бы рада была, чтобы меня так же, как вас, вот так обманули в детстве, что Бог есть, но я уже знаю, что Его нет. Но вы добрые, вы хорошие. И они продолжали молиться за меня и очень просили, чтобы я прочитала молитву покаяния. Эта молитва покаяния была напечатана в Библии, которую мне подарили. И я подумала, я прочитаю эту молитву покаяния, чтобы уже так не расстраивать тех хороших девочек, которые мне проповедовали. И я помню, что я вечером, это было, покурила в подъезде, пришла домой, был поздний вечер, пришла домой, встала на колени, прочитала молитву покаяния, а про себя сказала: Господи, если это неправда, я долго так не смогу. Это было удивительно. Я проснулась ночью. Утром, когда я проснулась, я почувствовала, что я совершенно не хочу курить. Я курила 11 лет. И после молитвы покаяния у меня пропало всякое желание до сих пор курить. И у меня пропал дух страха. У меня к тому времени умерла бабушка, дедушка и папин единственный младший брат. И я услышала, после похорон, я услышала голос: «Ты будешь следующая». И очень сильный дух смерти напал на меня, я не знала, что мне делать, я очень мучилась от этого. И вот когда я пригласила Иисуса Христа в свою жизнь, практически не веря, что Он есть, я пережила освобождение от никотина, я пережила освобождение от духа смерти. И так началась моя удивительная новая жизнь. Впоследствии мы познакомились с Фредом, и я просила у Бога, чтобы у меня был муж, который любит его больше, чем меня. И я очень рада, что он любящий Бога человек, и мы очень счастливы в браке. У нас 4 детей и 3 внуков.
And so we got married, and then we started evangelizing together. And when the people gave their life to the Lord, we couldn't take them to the underground church, because the underground church, even when they had official permission to register, they were still suspicious of the changes. They thought communism would still come back. So they will not open up easily for new converts to come in, because the KGB used to send people to them undercover to get information. They were suspicious of new converts also. So even when officially they made me the pastor of the church, I later realized that I was the first African pastor in the whole Soviet Union, officially. So even when I became that pastor of the church, in the 90s, like our church was the first non-denominational church in our city. And so it was, and also an African pastor. So people thought that this is not serious. And secondly, most Ukrainians thought it was an insult, for an African to teach them the gospel. So there were a lot of hostility. And this went on for a number of years. Hostilities to me, to my wife, to our children, to the extent that I was physically assaulted a number of times. So I was taken to court. I was accused of, because people were getting delivered from alcoholism, drug addiction, just because they heard the gospel, they prayed for, their lives were being changed, some were being healed physically. I was accused because I had a medical education of practicing medicine without license. I was taken to court for that. They threatened to deport me. The Orthodox Church, which was mainly Russian Orthodox Church, they didn't like what I was doing, because they thought everybody who converts and come to our church, I'm proselyting, because every Ukrainian by default is an Orthodox Christian. And so that was the difficulties we had, a lot of persecutions that we had. But then from 2014 to 2022, to the present year when the war started, people in Ukraine in the 90s, on one side, they were very open, very hungry for the gospel, very open to listen. But then by 2021, Ukraine was moving towards the West. People had become more materialistic. People were less open to the gospel. But when the war came, things changed. Okay, many people, because of what was happening, they had to leave the country. But everybody in Ukraine, including the government, the army, the police, they now become very receptive to the gospel.
И для всех людей это был огромный стресс. Мы такого не переживали никогда. Какие чувства люди переживают, какой страх обрушивается, и ты буквально не знаешь, что тебе делать. И я, наверное, вот как женщина переживала это намного болезненнее. И я сказала: Фред, я не останусь, мы должны уехать, я не хочу здесь оставаться. И вот мы быстренько погрузили вещи, какие только могли под руку попасться, и поехали. Мы выехали вечером и очень спешили уехать до комендантского часа. И по мере того, как мы ехали, я понимала, что что-то не то происходит, что нам не надо уезжать. А дома, когда мы собирались, я услышала голос: Лена, а я остаюсь здесь. И я думаю: нет, это не твой голос, Иисус. И потом в дороге я поняла, что мне очень хочется вернуться назад. Я поняла, что это был голос Иисуса. И я поняла, что мы делаем ошибку. И вот мы ехали в ночной машине, я писала Фреду смс-ки: Фред, я хочу вернуться. Я смотрю, он молчит. И я думала, что он не разделяет это мнение. И потом я говорю, потому что мы ехали с другими людьми, и я говорю:
The further we moved from our city, the less peace I had. And the more I felt that the Lord was saying, you are leaving, I am staying. And it's interesting, my wife, it happened that she also felt the same thing. But I didn't know what she was feeling. I didn't want to force her to stay. So as we were going, we approaching the Hungarian border. I was sitting in front of the car. She was at the back seat, and she sent a text message to me. Initially, she sent a message. I didn't see it. And then I hear her draw my attention. I look at my phone, and I see that she's written, I want to go home, or let's go home. And then I look at her, and I smile and say, yeah, I think this is what we should do. And so we turned, and we made a U-turn. After praying with the other families who were with us, we sent them off because they want to leave. We told them not to feel bad. We are returning back. And when we came back, actually that time that we turned around was very weird because everybody was going one direction. We were the only people who were going the opposite direction. It was very fearful and very frightening. But eventually, after a long journey, it took up almost a day before we came back to our city. And we realized why the Lord wanted to bring us. And this is what we have been doing, the work that we've been doing ever since then. We've helped thousands of people to be evacuated, to be given help, supplies. And we've realized that the Lord has prepared us for this time. What the Lord reveals to us is that He wants us to be the light in the darkness. In John chapter 1, verse 5, John says that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
Военные нам рассказывают тоже очень много историй, как Бог их хранит. Недавно в нашу церковь приехал один военнослужащий, ему всего 22 года. И он уже 4 года служит. И вот он говорит, когда они отступали, его командир окликнул и говорит: Руслан, мы отступаем. Он на мгновение повернул голову, и благодаря тому, что он повернул голову, пуля прошлась вот так вот по лицу, через щеку и вылетела через нос. Если бы он не повернул голову, пуля была бы в голове. И это был бы конец его жизни. А так удивительно, у него сейчас шрам на лице, и у него была проблема с глазом, но ему сделали операцию в Виннице. Мы поэтому и познакомились с ним, что он проходил лечение в Виннице. Но он жив. Я говорю: Руслан, кто за тебя молился? Что такое чудо в твоей жизни? Он говорит: бабушка. со своей бабушкой, он приходил в церковь, и Фред молился за него. Вот. И когда он уехал после лечения снова на фронт,